Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished entrepreneur from Hyderabad, India, Mr. Tarun Mor. Tarun, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. Tarun is the founder and CEO of CoKarma, and he's a serial entrepreneur. So, Tarun, before we talk about CoKarma and co-working, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Yeah, sure. I started my journey as a 14-year young boy who started selling saris at his father's textile store.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first experience of business and sales. So did that for a while. So my father used to run the store in the older part of Hyderabad. Then from there, I finished my education and graduation in Hyderabad. Then moved to Australia, right? And lived in Australia for about 8 years, did my MBA from there, worked as an analyst. And while I was working as an analyst, I realized that what I always wanted to do was business, right? So while I was even working full time, I was doing businesses on the side, right? So I did a couple of startups while I was there. And then came back and started CoKarma, right?
So, wonderful. So now tell me about the inspiration behind starting CoKarma and how are you different from others?
Yeah, sure. So the idea for CoKarma first came when I was in Australia. This was about 2013-14. I was planning to run an edtech startup at that time. And we used to go to the co-working spaces there in Melbourne. Right. And I thought that, this is a decent business. Maybe we will do this when we are old because it's a typical real estate business at its core. But when we came back to India, and when I say we, it's me and my wife, Ekta. So both of us are co-founders in CoKarma. So when we came back to India, we realized that there are not many spaces around our home, right? So I wanted a space where I can run my 3-4 people at tech company and have a collaboration opportunity with people around me, right? So that wasn't readily available from where I lived in the city at that time. So this was 2014-15 that I'm talking about.
Right.
So I thought, we'll start a small space of 40-seater, right? We'll run our small company from there, and rest of the space we'll give to other entrepreneurs that live around. And that's how CoKarma was born.
Amazing. And how many centers do you have now?
We have 6 locations which are live, Ashutosh, and we are also sort of building 2 new centers, right? So all these 8 locations now are in Hyderabad. Yeah.
Amazing. So, one of the things that I've often wondered in a lot of the co-working spaces is that a lot of power comes when you are able to create a community.
Yeah.
What do you do at CoKarma to create a sense of community within your spaces?
Right. So that's a good question, Ashutosh. I think there are a few things that we do to create that sense of community here, and community is core to CoKarma. And then we start thinking about it from the design of the space, right? So when we sort of design our spaces or cabins, the one thing that we ensure while we are building these spaces they are collaborative, right? And we don't have closed cabins. We have cabins which have glass partitions, so that way you can see who the other team is working on the other side, and you can sense that energy that is coming from the other room. We have a lot of collaborative spaces. We have spaces which have games available. We have cafes which are collaborative, right? So there's a lot of collaboration spaces available. But apart from these spaces, when we talk about people as people, we want to sort of have people connection, right? So co-working by its design has multiple people and multiple types of companies working under the same roof, right? And that in itself will sort of ignite the sense of, hey, I need somebody who can help me with X. Can you guys, connect me to somebody in your community with this? I need help with Y. Can you guys connect me with somebody who can provide me Y, right? So all of these things come naturally. What we also proactively do is we host a lot of meetups and events, right? So these meetups and events are an opportunity for fellow founders and fellow entrepreneurs to meet and learn from each other and see what mistakes others have done and sort of, build on that and not make the same mistakes. Right? So these are some of the things.
Amazing. And, wanted to ask you, how has the co-working space evolved since you started? Because we also had some very high profile challenges like WeWork.
Yeah, no, see, I think co-working as an industry in India specifically has evolved over the past few years, and it has grown at a very fast pace, right? When we started our first center, which was a small 40-seater space, now we have about 2,400 seats among our 8 centers. But that 40-seater center that we started, we had to explain to people what co-working was. We would have people come up to us and say, "Hey, are you running a what do you call cafe or a what do you call internet center where people would come and sort of use internet?" So we had to explain to people that that's co-working is actually a place where you collaborate with other people. There are other businesses that actually work under this same roof, and then there are sort of opportunities to learn from each other. Right? So it's a lot different from what you understand. So we had to explain firstly what co-working was when we started. Then what has happened in the past, 4-5 years. So since 2018, right, since the larger players came in, a lot of education came in about co-working in the market, right? So it had sort of grown from a space which was just used by startups to a space which is used by mature companies as well. For example, some of our clients, right? Now our clients at some of our centers are, Royal Enfield, Dish TV, right? So these are companies that you would have never thought of would use co-working, but their, Hyderabad offices or Hyderabad branch offices are running from our centers, right? So it has evolved from being, just a startup space to a space just for IT companies to a space now which is utilized by anybody that needs an office. So
this is very interesting. When large established companies choose to work with CoKarma and not take their own brick and mortar office, I'd love to ask you, what is the driver for these old established companies to move into a CoKarma type of working area rather than build their own office?
Yeah, sure. So there are a few drivers. I think one of the first things is, some of these companies, right? Especially if they're small, if they are, let's say, between 4 people to 200 people companies in the region, right? Then managing these offices to accommodate their employees becomes a challenge, right? So they would have to hire a facility manager. They would have to take a long-term lease if they're taking an office by themselves. They would have to build an office, right? And then their employees have to find that office closer to where they are or where they want to come, right? So, so what happens is co-working solves for a lot of these problems, right? So, somebody like a Royal Enfield comes to us and says, "Hey, I need a 20 people office for my employees that live in the Begumpet location of Hyderabad," right? So we can just give them a small 20 to 40 seater office where their employees who live close by to that area can come and sort of use their office, becomes like a satellite office for them. So it saves them in terms of infrastructure cost. It saves them in terms of time, right? So they don't have to manage these little things. All these little things are managed by a co-working space, right? And third thing is obviously community, right? So we host in-house community member meetups, which sort of become a value add for them, right? So we hosted, for example, yesterday we had Chandrayaan-3 landing on the moon, right? So we screened that at all our centers. So all these people would come together, watch this screening with 100 other people around them or 200 people around them, and get that sense of achievement together.
Amazing! How amazing! Yeah. And you give me examples of these 3 major brands. What are the typical type of professionals or businesses who benefit the most from working through CoKarma?
Yeah, so see, currently in our portfolio, close to about 80-85% companies are pure IT companies or startups, right? About 5 to 7% companies would be companies who are, where there are professionals, right? So you would have a chartered accountant or an interior designer or somebody in a specific profession sort of using our spaces. And then the rest of it would be, sort of established companies, looking for spaces, right? We're also growing. So up until now, our centers have been of a medium size. Now we have started taking larger, bigger centers as well. So with these bigger centers, we are hoping that we would be able to attract a lot more larger and bigger companies.
Interesting. Yeah. And Tarun, what role does technology play in all your spaces?
It plays a key role, especially if you look at some of the amenities that we provide, right? For example, we provide shareable meeting rooms and conference rooms to our members, right? So our members can go on our mobile app and sort of book these meeting rooms, without having any manual intervention. They can see what is available and then just sort of make the booking for the slot that they need, right? So that's one thing. And then through our app, they can sort of see what other members are doing. They can push some of their marketing material through us, through all the web and online presence that we have. And then most of our lead and CRM sort of comes through our online and web and technology channels, right? So I think it plays an important role, but at its heart, co-working spaces are a people and a human business, right? So it's a business where you're bringing people together and building communities, right? So that's what it is.
Wow. And what measures do you, as the owners, take to maintain a positive and inclusive work environment?
All of the things that I spoke to you about earlier, right? So firstly, making sure that there are less barriers for people to sort of meet and interact with each other. Secondly, have active collaboration and meetup opportunities for people to come together in a group and sort of enjoy and celebrate. For example, last Friday, we hosted an event where there was a live singer who came, right? So it was an unwinding event for our members to sort of come in and participate, listen to their favorite songs, and at the same time sort of meet other people, other entrepreneurs, other businesses around them, right? So there are things that we do by design, things that we do proactively for our members. And thirdly, we do meetups and events where we call people from outside to sort of come and experience our community, and for our community sort of meet these new people as well on a regular basis, right? So these are the three pillars.
Wow. And, given the fact that I've seen some of these co-working spaces where there are a lot of people and the cafeterias are very full, etc. How do you maintain a balance between a productive work environment and a very relaxed atmosphere?
Right. Okay. That's a good question. So see, when we think about spaces, right? We want to build spaces where we foster creativity, right? So that's why we make sure that our spaces are not boring. As you can see in the picture that I am in, this is one of the receptions of one of our spaces, right?
Very smart looking center.
Yeah, thank you. So we ensure that these spaces, by the look of it and by the aesthetics of it, are beautiful and nice. But at the same time, these are sort of companies and businesses working under one roof. So a lot of these companies by themselves sort of run in a way that they make sure that their employees are productive. They make sure that their job is getting done. But at the same time, they have these other opportunities available when they need it, right? So I think that's what it is. I think making sure that these spaces look beautiful, people have options, but at the same time, they're running their businesses.
And what would happen if two competitors were to come into the same center?
It would, it can go either way. It can,
Absolutely.
One of the ways it can go is, they can sort of collaborate and sort of, merge and grow each other. Right. Or the other thing that can happen is, they can sort of learn from each other. They can see what other teams are doing and then sort of learn from each other. And then there might be, situations where there might be conflict as well, where one competitor might say, I don't want anyone to see what I am doing in my business. For example, at one of our high-tech city centers, there are two companies that are in VFX, right? So the second company that came in said, I don't want my space on the same floor as the other company. Please make another floor, right? And cover my entire space so that whatever we are doing should not be. So things like these happen, right? So we have to sort of cater to that.
Very interesting. So you just mentioned that you've got 6 centers and you are building 2 more. What have been some of your challenges as you have scaled up? And where do you see the growth of CoKarma?
Yeah, I think both these questions, answer to both these questions is intertwined. See, I think one of the biggest challenges when we started CoKarma was capital, because this business by its nature is very capital intensive, right? So you have to build these large, beautiful offices, but to do that, it requires a lot of money, right? So among these 6 centers that we did in the start, the first 2 centers were investments from us, and we sort of invested in the infrastructure and we sort of took the spaces on rent and did them. But after that, every other branch that we had done, has been either in partnership with the person who owned the building or in partnership with an investor who sort of invested in the infrastructure, right? So we, sort of thought of these creative models to sort of scale it and use sort of, leverage sort of capital that is there in different parts, right? So we, either sort of collaborate with building owners or with investors to sort of grow. And so that's how we've been able to grow to about 8 centers now. And that's how we see ourselves growing, essentially in co-working, there are 3 sort of models, right? One is you go out and rent the space yourself. Second is, you sort of do a revenue share with the person who sort of owns the building or wants to invest, right? And third is a franchise model where you sort of partner with an investor and sort of grow. So we try and use either of these 3 models.
Fascinating. So Tarun, I have time for 2 more questions. What do you believe is the future of co-working in our country? And how do you plan to adapt to any changing trends?
Yeah, I think the future for co-working is very bright to start with, right? So the way it has been growing, right? We feel that, the office space market in India, right, by its stats, right, is over $1 trillion industry just in India and a multi-trillion-dollar industry globally, right? Right now in India, co-working occupies in the office space segment about 10-12% of the market. Right? Pre-COVID, around 2019-20, it was about 4-5%, right? So it has doubled from that sort of capacity. And we see that within the next 4-5 years, co-working will have about 40-45% market share within the office space segment. You talk to any co-working player, they're all growing. Most of the co-working players in India specifically are growing. There are some, I understand bad examples globally where some of the companies are struggling. If you look at global companies like Regus, they're also doing well. They've been a player in the industry from the past 20 years and they've been doing well, right? So it depends on how you run the how you run your business, how you run the model, and what sort of dynamics you had while you were sort of growing as well, right? So that's how we look at this. Yeah.
Interesting. And do you think the way the future of work is changing, where work from home or hybrid work, etc. Do you think that is also beneficial to co-working? Because now people are saying we need less permanent office space.
Yeah, definitely. I think what is happening is a lot of people, right, during COVID got used to working from their home. But our Indian homes are designed, in a way that it is not suitable for 2-3 people working. So, for example, a husband and a wife working together in the same home, right? So a lot of these people, right, what they're doing is they are stepping out and looking for co-working spaces nearby their home. They still don't want to travel to 20-30 kilometers to get to work. They still don't want to spend that 1.5 hour to get to work, right? So they want something which is close by to their home, but at the same time, casual gives them that freedom which they didn't have at their offices, right? So that's what's happening, right? So a lot of people are looking for options near their home. A lot of co-working is growing in tier 2 towns as well, right? So we've recently been to Surat, and we were seeing if there were some options or opportunities to grow over there, because a lot of people who were from Surat working in other cities are working from their hometown, doing work from home, but are looking for co-working spaces around there, right? So a lot of these trends are happening, which are sort of helping co-working.
Oh, amazing! And you may just find, talking to the HR heads of large companies who are struggling to manage people working from home, to say, why don't you come and take 3 seats in a CoKarma office of 10 seats, and I will at least ensure that my people are working in an office rather than not knowing what they're doing at home.
Correct. It's 2 ways. I think both employees, a lot of employees are finding benefits in sort of taking spaces nearby their home, and companies are finding, as you said, benefits from taking offices nearby their home. For example, Tata Group has been taking regularly our day passes or meeting room spaces to conduct their meetings for their employees who want something nearby their hotels.
How amazing! How amazing! And my last question to you now, Tarun, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. What would you say are 3 lessons as an entrepreneur that you have learned while building CoKarma that you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from our conversation?
Right. I think so. You said 3 lessons, right? So
3 lessons.
I think one of my biggest learning has been to be a listener, right? So listen, listen to what the market is saying, listen to what your customers are saying, right? Listen to what your employees are saying, right? In terms of what is happening, because these are people who are sort of experiencing what you're providing as a product or a service. So my first advice is be a listener, have that open mind, because a lot of entrepreneurs are very strong minded and they feel that they're sure and they know 100% of what to do. But being a listener sort of helps a lot. Second is have a business model which is very clear, which sort of brings in revenue, because end of the day, it's the revenue that is sort of going to help you run your business, that is going to help you grow your business, and then that is going to help you sustain, right? So be clear about your business model. Right. Third is, have good people around you, right? I've been very lucky to, have a little bit of a knack to identify, identify good people, right? And I have a great team. I have a great co-founder who sort of, works with me, helps me, and then, it becomes a journey together. Right? You're going to work with these people. You're going to be with these people for about 5, 10, 20 years of your life, right? So make sure that you have good people around you, that can help you grow and then what the same thing as you.
How amazing. And on that note, Tarun, and your 3 wonderful lessons: be a listener, have an open mind. Second, you said was have a clear business model that brings in revenues. And third one you said was have good people around you. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for talking to me about CoKarma and all the work that you are doing for a lot of people who work out of your co-working spaces. Thank you also for speaking to me about the co-working space in general and what the future holds. Thank you again and good luck.
No problem. Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for having me here. It was wonderful chatting with you, and hopefully this will be helpful for other people.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.